Okay, so I do see comments like that all the time. And I don't think I'm a horrible boss. I think I've got a pretty good keen eye as far as hiring people, but I will admit over the past 22 years, I have had some crazy stories. I've had some horrible employees. I've had some really bad experiences. And while I've shared those with you guys in some of the videos, I don't really think that you can take the entire sum of my business and encapsulate it into I am a shitty boss. But I did want to share this one crazy story with you guys today. So if you guys are ready for a wild ride, buckle up and get ready for it because this one is absolutely nutty. All right, so this is the story, right? And let me preface this by saying over the last 2 decades, I have had a tremendous amount of employees. I've had multiple businesses, and over that time frame, I've had really good employees. I've had some mediocre employees, and I've had some really, really bad employees. And today, I'm going to tell you about one of those bad apples, why I hired him, why I kept him, even though he wasn't that great, and why I eventually ended up firing him, and what transpired after that. So hang on because this is some crazy stuff. 𝐤𝑂TE is giving away a Ford F-150 to a premium, platinum, or enterprise subscriber. And if you need help keeping up with customers, sending estimates, invoices, or collecting payments, give 𝐤𝑂TE a try for free. Just click the link in the comment section and the description of this video. Okay, so as you guys know, I've had a pressure washing business for many, many years. I used to have a landscape business. And before I sold that a few years ago, this was where this employee came into my life. He was on the landscaping side of the business. I needed some employees. I had sent out an email to my customer list asking if they had any recommendations or if they knew anybody that was looking for employment because I was hiring. I've got a really extensive email list. And one of the first responses that I got was from a long-term customer of about 10 years on the pressure washing side of the business. He lived in my neighborhood. We knew them well. I knew his wife, saw them socially at the little club in our neighborhood, and I really enjoyed talking with them, hanging out with them. I was a little surprised when I got the response from him because it wasn't for him, of course. It was for a son that I had no idea existed. Not once had he ever mentioned that he had a son, which seemed odd at the time, but not so odd in hindsight. So the email said that his adult son had been working for a local nursery for years, but for whatever reason, he was no longer working there and needed a job. He had extensive knowledge of plants, shrubs, trees, as well as taking care of them. The nursery also had a landscape maintenance business, which he worked for many years as well, all of which sounded amazing. Finding somebody that had knowledge and experience is always a huge advantage, right? However, the next couple of sentences were basically this guy removing himself from the situation completely, telling me that he wasn't vouching for his son. Should have been a red flag. That he had a history of drug use, which was one of the reasons why he was no longer employed at the nursery. He had said that he had thought that he was doing much better, and he just met a lady who he was dating. They were very serious. She had a daughter from a previous marriage, and they really seemed to be helping him keep focused and going down the right path. And again, was not vouching for him, but just wanted to let me know that someone was available if I really needed somebody quick. So started out good. He was a hard worker, maybe too hard, nothing to really draw too much attention to himself. He came to work on time. He did his job. He left. The one thing that was a little strange at first was the fact that he would fall asleep in my office for the very few minutes that it would take me to write a check at the end of the week. Obviously, being a little naive, I just attribute it to a hard week's worth of work, not the fact that he was munching on sedatives on a daily basis. Now, something that I've learned over the years is one of the telltale signs that somebody has an addiction problem, and that is money. If payday is on Friday, they're probably going to ask you to get paid on Tuesday and Thursday, and most likely Monday and Wednesday as well. But he never did this. He always waited until Friday. He never asked for advances, so there was never really any red flags raised on that front. So the incident that happened, which was what led to everything else I'm about to tell you, is we used to service a neighborhood about 45 minutes away over in South Carolina. We had about 30 yards that we used to maintain, and we would spend 2 to 3 days a week out there working. Now, this was before I had GPS trackers on everything, before I really started to micromanage, which I hopefully don't really think I do that much nowadays. I've got systems in place that help to eliminate the need for that, but I'm sure my employees would probably say differently if you ask them. But he had taken the truck and the trailer and a couple guys over to South Carolina to do the work. They got done. They took the truck and the trailer back to the yard, or so I thought, until that night. And I'll never forget this. I was laying on the floor watching TV. My wife and kids, they were on the couch, and the phone rings. And I answer the phone, and on the other end is someone introducing himself as Officer so-and-so. I don't remember the name. I just remember thinking, oh shit. And he proceeds to tell me that my work truck with company name, logo, phone number, website was down in a not so good area, right? It was in an area of town where I'd never heard of. I didn't know what the street was, but my employee was there with the truck and he was getting arrested. And I needed to come down there and get all of the equipment out of the back of the truck. The handheld equipment that was supposed to be in the trailer, weed whackers, edgers, chainsaws, all kinds of stuff was in the back of the truck. And the officer said that if it wasn't impounded and if I wasn't able to get down there to get it, that equipment probably wouldn't last more than a few minutes after they drove off. So I knew that I needed to act quickly and I needed to get down there as fast as I could. And I had no idea where this was. And I told the officer that, and he said, of course you don't. You don't, because it's in one of the most dangerous places in Savannah. Lots of drugs, lots of gangs, lots of bad stuff going on, and probably somewhere that myself or anybody that I ever associated with would never need to go. So obviously, this takes me by surprise. Like I said, I'm just laying down there watching TV with the family, but I also know that I need to get up, find a way to get down there and get my equipment and the truck and get back to the yard. So I called the guy's dad. I explained to him the situation, that his son was getting arrested and that I needed him to come with me to pick up my truck and the equipment that his son took and take it back to the yard where we kept everything. Now, obviously, this was an embarrassment for him. It was an embarrassment for me to make the phone call as well, but he also did tell me about his kid needing a job. So he was the one that got the call. So needless to say, it was a quiet and uncomfortable ride going down to the hood, especially when we pull up and there's my truck with all the equipment in it, which again, didn't make a lot of sense at the time to me because we had a big enclosed trailer and that's where we kept everything safe and secure. So we get out of the truck, we walk over to the police officer. His son is nowhere in sight, right? I didn't know where he was. And then it turns out that he is in the back of the squad car and he is going to jail. And that is when I started to learn some of the very interesting things that had transpired and had been going on for some time. The first of which is my trailer was not at the yard. We had stopped by there first just to double check, and it was not there. And it was not on the back of the truck. So I have no idea where the trailer is. The police are not allowing us to talk to the former employee because he's in custody and he was on his way out. So what I was told next, and the reason that he needed my truck down in that part of town, was twofold, actually. But the police apparently were already very familiar with his personal vehicle, which was a little blue truck, because he would drive down to this part of town and he would trade his vehicle for a certain amount of time, the use of his vehicle, if you will, to drug dealers. And they would go around, drive his truck, dealing drugs, and they would do this in exchange for drugs for this guy. Now, the reason that they did this is because the vehicle was not tied to any of them, just this guy, but because he wasn't driving, he wasn't liable. Not that they cared about that, but they needed a vehicle. They also knew that the police could not pursue them at high speeds, so they would haul ass should the police ever come. So they would basically just evade police on a nightly basis in this kid's truck, and now my truck. And the police knew his truck. Now they knew my truck, and they knew this kid, and they knew everything about everything that was going on, but they never were able to kind of put it all together and grab them or prove anything. So the next thing that I learned was that the reason that all of my equipment was in the back of the truck was because this guy would take my equipment almost every single Friday to a pawn shop. Okay. He would pawn it. He would get cash. He would go buy drugs, and he would go sell enough drugs to buy the equipment back by Monday, and basically using my equipment to finance his drug habit. Now, if you really think about it, it was actually quite brilliant. And had he applied his business acumen to something of a worthy cause, I'm sure that he would have been a much better spot than he was now. In fact, I know he would be in a much better spot than he is now, but I'm going to tell you about that spot that he's in a couple minutes. So we take the truck, all the equipment, we go back to the yard. The dad gets in my vehicle and I take him back to his house. Again, pretty uncomfortable, but this time he was a little bit more talkative about the situation and some of the bullshit that he'd been, had to experience throughout his life with this kid. And it was heartbreaking. And I don't wish that upon anyone, but there is still very little resolution because my trailer is missing. The trailer had 2 0 turns and a walk behind, as well as ladders and a bunch of other equipment that wasn't being pawned. So I get on the phone and I call the sheriff's department where he was being booked, asking if I could speak with him. Right. And after causing quite a stir on the phone with the sheriff's department, they finally allowed him to get on the phone with me. I convinced him that I was a small business and my shit was stolen and that I was desperate and I needed, because he was the only one that knew where it was. So they were very nice and they let me talk with him on the phone. And he had told me that they had had a flat tire on their way back from that neighborhood in Bluffton, South Carolina. And he had pulled over into somebody's backyard. He talked with them and he assured me that it was safe and secure and the people had locked their gate so nobody could get back in there and steal the trailer. But it also had a flat tire, so that would have made it more difficult to take. Anyway, regardless, he didn't know exactly where it was, just a few basic landmarks and a basic idea of where he left the neighborhood and where he was going. And by now it's 12:30 a.m. and I am highly upset. I'm not tired and I want my stuff back. So I go and I get one of the trucks and I have a big flashlight and I start the search. And now the search is about 45 minutes away from my house in the middle of the night with really no idea where it could be, except, like I said, a few little landmarks. I eventually found it, right? I changed the tire and I brought it back to the yard safe and secure. So the good news, I got my equipment back. The bad news is I was out an employee, but maybe that's not such bad news. And like I said, this kid got arrested. He was convicted on some stuff. I don't exactly know what or how long he went away for, but I do recall talking with his dad a couple years later, and he had gotten out and was in some sort of program in a different city and apparently was doing well. He had gotten married to that lady and her daughter had stuck around with him, really trying to help him get better. And it wasn't until about a year ago that I ran into his dad again and asked how he was doing. And he had told me that he had passed away, that he'd overdosed, and he left, obviously, the wife and her child behind, which unfortunately and sadly, this guy was probably the only male figure in her life, and which is sad and all. And that is the end of that horrible employee story. So, some things are out of my control. You try to give people a chance. You try to give people the opportunity to better themselves, to improve on their current situation. And, we can only do so much. But I've also learned that when you see red flags, pay attention to them. Don't hire out of desperation. You got to hire the right people. They are representing you. You're representing your company. They're being good stewards of you and your name, hopefully. And because of that, my hiring processes and the way that I go about it has significantly changed from way back then. But it did make for a good story. It was a little stressful at the time. And that's it, guys. Do not forget to check out Quote IQ. We are giving away that Ford F-150, and you need to be a premium, platinum, or enterprise subscriber to be entered into that. If you guys are already subscribed to the app and you're using it, then you're all set. You don't have to do anything else. But if you do want to get entered, you do want to have a great CRM that is going to help you, create estimates, send invoices, collect payments, and a whole lot more. Check out Quote IQ. Thanks for watching.